He would crush and conquer entire Prussian state, take into control northern Italy, crush Austria multiple times, conquer Spain and make his own brother Joseph the king of the state. He would annex Netherlands and establish the Duchy of Warsaw, a French client state after defeating both Prussia and Russia. He dissolved the Holy Roman Empire and reorganized the German states under his influence. This makes it fairly interesting to ponder how was his childhood, what made him Napoleonic. Born in Corsica off the coast of France, the Italian city-state of Genoa had nominally ruled Corsica for over 2 centuries, but rarely tried to exert her control beyond the coastal towns into the mountainous interior, where the Corsicans were fiercely independent. At the time, Pasquale Paoli proclaimed an independent republic, a notion that became a reality after he won the Battle of Pedicoste in 1763 against the city-state of Genoa. The man Corsican nicknamed Babbu or Daddy in translated terms quickly set out into reforming Ireland's financial, legal and educational systems, built roads, started a printing press and brought something approaching harmony between the island's competing clans of powerful families. The young Napoleon grew up revering Paoli as a lawgiver, reformer and a genuinely benevolent dictator. But the city-state of Genoa had no appetite for a fight that she knew would be required to reassert her control and authority over Corsica, and reluctantly sold the island to King Louis XV of France for 40 million francs in January of 1768. The French foreign minister, this guy,
Étienne François de Choiseul,
appointed a Corsican named
Matteo Buttafuoco,
to rule the island in order to not provoke the island's Corsican population too much from their French overlords. Paoli naturally opposed this, so of course the French sent a force of 30,000 men under the command of this dude
Noël Jourdain de Vaux,
with the task of putting down the rebellion, and soon replaced the Corsican
Matteo Buttafuoco,
with the Frenchmen.
Charles Louis de Marbeuf.
This gave rise to the rebellion with the extremely independent Corsicans. Carlo, Napoleon's father, acted as the personal secretary of Paoli at the time and campaigned with him in the mountains where his wife Letizia became pregnant with Napoleon. As the French smashed the Corsicans, Carlo refused to go to the exile with Paoli. Instead, he took a oath of loyalty to King Louis XV, which helped him retain his position in the island. Within 2 months, the Battle of Ponte Novo, Carlo had dined with the head Comte de Vaux, who oversaw the battle, placing him well within the French by quickly switching loyalty. It is alleged that Napoleon, who proclaimed himself as a fierce Corsican nationalist, despised his father throughout his adolescence for switching his loyalties. He later understood that no good would have come being caught in the wrong side of history. His mother, Maria Letizia Romolino, as she had been christened, was an attractive, strong-willed, holy and educated woman from a good family. Let me throw some interesting facts regarding the mother that bore Napoleon. Her dowry was valued at an impressive 175,000 francs, which included a kiln and a house adjoining an apartment, a vineyard, and 8 acres of land. This helped with the love that Carlo is believed to have felt for another woman at the time of his wedding, putting his love far behind the lucrative dowry with a beautiful woman. Throughout Napoleon's life, of course, the British were there to make statements like a low-bred upstart from a despicable island of Corsica. One of the more intricate comments that were made on his background came from
Jean-Denis Lanjuinais,
when Napoleon was to become the emperor of the French in 1804, saying, "What, will you submit to give your country a master taken from the race of origin so ignominious that Romans disdained to employ them as slaves?" This was very funny to me. His childhood as a student was described as he was precocious and prodigious reader, drawn at an early age to history and biography. Letizia told the government minister that her son had never partaken of the amusements of children his own age, that he carefully avoided them, that he found himself a little room on the 3rd floor of the house in which he stayed by himself and didn't come down very often, even to eat with his family. Up there he read constantly, especially history books. His elder brother Joseph later recalled at their primary school when Napoleon was instructed to sit under either the Roman or the Carthaginian flag, Napoleon insisted that they swap places and utterly refused to join the losing Carthaginians. Ancient history provided him with an encyclopedia of military and political tactics and quotations that he would draw on throughout his life. The inspiration was so profound that when posing for paintings, he would sometimes put his hand into his waistcoat in imitation of the toga-wearing Romans. As is widely known, Napoleon's accent was thick due to his upbringing in Corsica till the age of 9. 9. Then he was sent to French school. His complications of anxiety and bullying from his classmates started. Coming back to his father, Carlo officially became a noble when Mabiuf declared that those who could prove 2 centuries of noble heritage could enjoy extensive privileges of the French noblesse. Carlo could now legally sign him as de Bonaparte for the first time and sit in the Corsican assembly. Now he could apply for education of his children from the French state, of which Napoleon would reap benefits. This would require Napoleon to master French as a prerequisite to go to those military schools. After mastering French in the short span of 3 months, Napoleon was admitted to the Royal Military School of Brienne-le-Château, where conditions were Spartan. Students had a straw mattress and 1 blanket each. When Napoleon's parents visited him in June of 1782, like all mothers, Letizia expressed concern of how thin he had become. Mabiuf personally expedited Carlo's application through the French bureaucracy, a fact that later kindled the rumor that he was Letizia's love and possibly Napoleon's biological father, a rumor spread by British writers. It was also said that Paoli was his biological father, a rumor similarly dismissed. Damn the British. Napoleon read a lot of military history and biographies of people with power. Here are a few, giving rise to the theme that occurred often from Napoleon's readings of people who stood in history as powerful, and his teachings in Brienne encouraged him in the belief of him standing with the giants of the past. Too often, Napoleon's opposition to the British government had been ascribed to blind hatred or the Corsican spirit of vendetta. It could more accurately be seen as a perfectly rational response to the fact that the decade of his birth, the Treaty of Paris of 1763, had cut France out of the great continental landmasses of India and North America. And by the time he was a teenager, Britain was busy conquering Australia too. Napoleon's political views was beginning to form. He believed the state should have the power of life and death over its citizens, right to prohibit luxuries, and the duty to censor theatre and opera. Well, that is nationalism. In 1781, Napoleon received an outstanding school report from
Chevalier de Keralio,
the under-inspector of military school, who 2 years later recommended him to the prestigious École Militaire in Paris, with words excellent health, docile expression, mild, straightforward, thoughtful, conduct most satisfactory. Has always been distinguished for his application in mathematics. The boy would make a great sailor. Delving into Napoleon's mind, his Achilles heel was his inordinate pride of his native land. He was an outsider, a foreigner among the scions of governing class that he believed to be oppressing his own countrymen. The teasing had precisely the effect one might expect in a spirited boy and turned him into a proud Corsican nationalist who never failed to stand up for his motherland. He was blunt in his manners, bold, enterprising, and even ferocious, 4 adjectives that would serve to describe him for the rest of his life. Napoleon took his exams at Brienne on September 15, 1784. He passed easily, and late following the month he entered École Royale Militaire in Paris on the left bank of Seine. This was a far more socially elevated institution than Brienne. Now the prospect of jobs for Napoleon, he was not to join the navy because his mother thought he would drown or be burnt alive, so he chose, or rather selected, into a far more prestigious artillery. Of the 202 candidates from all of France military school in 1784, a total of 136 passed their final exams and only 14 was invited to enter the artillery. So Napoleon had been selected into an elite group. By the time Napoleon had spent 5 years at Brienne and 1 at École Militaire, he was thoroughly imbued with military ethos. His acceptance of revolutionary principles of equality before law, rational government, meritocracy, efficiency, and aggressive nationalism fit in well with the ethos. When Napoleon was 15 of age, his father Carlo died probably of stomach cancer, but possibly of perforated ulcer. Napoleon addressed his father's death in a letter to his great uncle, describing his father to be an enlightened, disinterested citizen, yet heaven let him die, that too 100 leagues from his native land, in a foreign country. It is interesting that Napoleon still considered France a foreign country. His father's death forced him to take final exams early as his father had left his family with some serious financial problems. He came 42nd out of 58 candidates. In September 1785, at the age of 16, he was commissioned to the prestigious
Compagnie d'Autun,
stationed in Valence. Being one of the youngest officers and the only Corsican there, Napoleon took dancing lessons at Valence, possibly recognizing how important it was for an officer to be socially presentable. He was a writer, penning around 60 essays, novellas, philosophical pieces, histories, treatises, pamphlets, and open letters before the age of 26. Taken together, they display his intellectual and political development, tracing the way he moved from a committed Corsican nationalist in the 1780s to a avowed anti-Paulist French officer who by 1793 wanted the Corsican revolt to be crushed by France. At the age of 17, Napoleon's religious views started to coalesce and then did not change much thereafter. Despite being taught by monks, he was never a true Christian. Being unconvinced in the divinity of Jesus, he did believe in some kind of divine power, be it one that seems to have had very limited interaction with the world beyond its original creation. Later, he was sometimes seen to wear the cross himself before battle, and as we shall see, he certainly also knew the social utility of religion. Pause and read one of the passages that he wrote after encountering a prostitute in an alley. After an absence of nearly 8 years from Corsica, he returned mainly to manage his father's affair of debt to the state. He returned to his regiment stationed at School of Artillery near Dijon and begins to form his conclusions of better form of government, in which he argues that military rule was better system of government than tyranny, and concluded unambiguously, there are very few kings who would not deserve to be dethroned. This was months preceding the fall of Bastille, the start of the French Revolution. Had this piece of writing been published, it would be nothing short of mutiny. As he was about to send his letter to the publisher, the news arrived that the French finance minister has been dismissed. Later, Napoleon was sent 20 miles down the Saône River to swear as second in command of the operation to put down the riot. Let honest men go to their homes. The 19-year-old is reportedly to have shouted to the crowd, I only fire upon the mob. Although he did his duty efficiently and impressed his commanding officer, General
Jean-Pierre Dutaille.
Political situation was such that before long, rioters were attacking public buildings and burning down tax offices in Auxonne itself. It was from this provincial vantage point that Napoleon saw the first harbinger of great political event that was to transform the history of France and Europe itself, and most importantly, his own life. The mob overrunning Bastille and small skirmishes plagued France. Louis XVI was under pressure, yet young Napoleon had misread the entire situation. He writes, in a month, all violence will subside and no questions will be asked, writing to his brother Joseph. He also wrote to his favorite Paoli, still in exile in London, but no longer would his divided loyalty serve his good. This was the beginning of the revolution that would bring France to its knees. He was going to have to choose.